Welcome back to Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm going to be concluding my conversation with actor David Doremus, who played GW Haynes for over 6 seasons. Over the course of 6 seasons, he played GW. So it has been a real pleasure to have him back joining me and chatting about his life and his time on the Waltons. Please welcome back, David. So when did you find out that GW was being killed off?
Well, there was kind of an interesting scenario because, of course, they did the volunteer first. And, of course, they watch every afternoon, every evening, the dailies, the takes that have been taken during the day. The ones that were, yes, cut, that's great. And no, even the stuff that's off mark. And, of course, the producers, directors, whoever sits in on that, make a final decision of what is going to hit it. And then, of course, the person that does the film clipping and tying together, they have a whole nother, arrangement of what's going to happen. But I think it was on that after watching one of the dailies, and I don't remember who came up to me and they said, "Dave, I didn't realize you were such a good actor. We're going to try to not kill you." And it's like, excuse me, because I hadn't gotten that script yet. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean, not kill me? And they said, well, yeah, in a couple episodes from now, we're going to actually have you pass away. And it's like, what do you say? And they said, well, we're going to try to see what we can do to change that. And it's like, oh, please change that. Please change that. That'd be really good. And then I think it was like a day later or something. I don't know if there was a discussion with regards to it or whatever, but they came back and they said, no, it's too far along into production. We can't make that change. So we are going to go ahead and have GW get killed or kill himself. I don't know. So I found out just in a short amount of time before. So yeah, it was kind of surprising, shocking, and again, I was hopeful, but I understood how it had to go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm surprised actually that you didn't find out when you got called to do that the first casualty episode to go, here's the script, and you read it and went, what?
Yeah,
I think that sort of thing happens also.
Yes, I totally believe that does, but actually they gave me a lead time of a couple of weeks or a week and a half. So it was a lot easier to take it, being that I had some preset when I was going to die. But
so I don't know if I knew before I saw the script.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I knew,
And I didn't get the script till, you typically get it a day or two ahead of time, or, what, I mean, you're involved in filming, the particular show that you're on, and then all of a sudden you'll get next week's, and whether that's you get it on the weekend or Thursday, Friday, whatever. But and I probably would have been in the same situation, except for the fact they said they were going to try to not kill me. And of course that told me what was going to happen in that episode. And I didn't realize that it wasn't going to be the next episode, that there was actually going to be one in between. But actually that kind of makes sense because I was going to have to go back, to camp from furlough and stuff like that, go through basic training more or whatever. Yeah. So it was logical that I was gone for just a little bit before I made the bad move.
Yeah. Did they tell you why they made the choice to kill off the character?
They said they needed it to be somebody that had a good presence, I guess. I mean, GW was like a part of the family, so it was going to be somebody close enough for people to believe, but not one of the family. So they never really explained it, but that was more, I guess, my interpretation of how it was going. They needed somebody close. Yeah. And I was the logical likely subject. I mean, close enough. I was your boy, again, boyfriend. I was in the family. I was almost like a Walton son. that's going to create some waves. And it did. I had actually heard that after they killed me, and it showed that the studios got some hate mail with regards to me dying.
Oh,
And I went, well, I mean, thank you, kind of thing. That people were upset that my character passed. And I think it's always had, a profound effect. But it was real. I mean, that's what was happening day in and day out in real life at that time. So, um, but it hit people, you know, right at their shirt sleeves, or when I say,
yeah. And I don't know at that point because it was the next season when they killed off Kurt at Pearl Harbor.
yeah,
So I don't know that they at that point knew that that was going to be, a plan.
yeah. Obviously, I don't think they. I don't know actually when they start writing. You maybe as a writer, I don't know how long in advance they actually review scripts and things like that, or how they get involved with the because it's from script to script, it's got to have some fluidity. So what? How is that brought together? Do the writers all sit down together and say, okay, I got 1, 5, 10, and 12, and you got, 8 and 4. I don't know how that process works. I've never been involved in that side of it. But somehow it's got to all mesh and work together, and, so on. So I don't know if they'd in it a year in advance know that they were going to do that or
I think
not.
it depends on the show, back in at the point. I don't know how it was on Nanny and the Professor, but I don't believe on the Waltons there was ever like a show Bible like they have now, where, if you're putting a show together, they're going to want to see what's the story arc for at least 3 seasons, maybe 5 seasons if
Yeah.
it's potentially going to go that long. I don't think they did that back in the 70s with our show, and we didn't have a lot of staff writers. There was a lot of sort of there was their pool of writers that they went to, but they were not like at the studio every day in a room like now happens. That they just I think there was the story editors, and there was Earl, and there was most of our producers were also writers, and so I think though they had those kinds of meetings with maybe whoever was writing that episode, but maybe not, because I think sometimes scripts, the writers I knew at that time, it was sort of like I knew a writer and he'd get a call going, hey, we'd like, he would go in and pitch some episode ideas to a series, and then he might get a call and go, okay, yeah, we're assigning you this script to write. And he went home and he wrote the script, and then he would turn it in, and maybe he'd get notes and ask for one revision, and he'd do that, and then he was kind of out of it, or maybe they just took it and then they did whatever revisions, but it sort of worked like that as opposed to it all being crafted internally.
Right. Like you said, like an arc. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting. You just said revisions, and I don't know how many times it happened to you. It happened to me multiple times, to where you'd have your scene or your script memorized, and typically I do that the night or the day before, and then you show up on screen and they go, "Oh, here's the yellow pages or the blue pages," and it's like totally different. You're like, "Oh no,
Yeah.
I had this memorized, and now you're changing it on me." So
Yeah. Were you pretty quick to learn lines? Because you talked about, showing up on set and not even knowing what the script might be. And
when I was younger, I don't know that I have it anymore, or can do it anymore. But like when I was on Nanny Professor, or a show, I'd have 600 lines, and I count my line, and then the line before mine. I could memorize that in an hour. So I could sit down, read the script, then I go back again and read the line previous to mine, and then my line, and I do that through the script, and I had it memorized. So I was very lucky that way, to not have to study, which I know some people really do. It's just not natural to, I guess it was natural to me. And what I would do is just put myself into the character, into the scene. And I think a lot of times um, you get a part because it's a lot like you. So um, it's something that you don't have to change very much, maybe the way you say it or how you say it. But I know on Nanny, I used to pride myself because, of course, I was dealing with younger children. And a lot of times they'd say their line wrong.
Mm.
So I used to pride myself on taking the information from their line, putting it into my line, making their line make sense, and then make it make sense enough to where the person after me would be able to respond the way they did.
Mm.
So I guess I could think pretty quick. And I used to always try to get the first take. That was my goal. And that's what I would do, pride myself. And sometimes the script supervisor would stop. No, that's not right. Cut, cut, cut. Other times they'd let it play out and see how it worked. And there was a few times to where it did, and they liked it where it worked better
Mhm.
because it came off of the child before mine, whether it be, Trent or Kim, natural to them in what they were saying. But I had to turn it around so that if one of them spoke afterwards, then it made sense. So yeah, I used that for me was what my goal was every single time when we had a scene. I
Cool.
was that was very important to try to make that happen.
How was it? Because we've talked about that you did Nanny and the Professor before the Waltons. How was that experience? How was that set to be on, and those people to work with? Have by comparison or not by comparison with the Waltons?
I think it wasn't so much as a family kind of orientation because the Waltons, there was a lot of you. So it seemed more like a family kind of thing. With us, it was pretty individual. And of course, a lot of times it was a picture of the kids. So they'd be in the scene and, they have somebody um, off camera, repeating lines. And so it wasn't either Juliet or Richard Long. It wasn't them. It was other people talking to you.
Hmm.
But Juliet was fantastic. She was like mom. She actually had a son a few years younger than me, and it was like my little brother. So
Hmm.
he was very cool. So he'd run around whenever possible with both Trent and I. Um, Richard Long, he was like a dad. I mean, he was very professional, very stern, treated you like one of your probably one of his kids. And
Uh-huh.
uh, but I can remember one time when I did a scene. I remember the scene, but it just didn't feel right. It didn't go right. And he looked at me because he was sitting off stage in a chair, and he looks at me and he goes, "Come here." And it's like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. So I went over and he grabbed me and he put me up on his knee and he goes, "Now, I think we can do it better like this." And so gave me a little instruction.
Mhm.
And I mean, obviously the relief was, so dramatic. I wasn't in trouble anymore. And went back and did the scene and apparently it went very well. Again, I don't remember what that was, but so he was very interested in having us do well. I mean, I'm sure it benefit him and the show and everything if we did. And of course, dealing with three younger kids, um, it it's difficult. If
Mhm.
you got the little ones running around everywhere because they're not always. I do remember though when I first went to my agents to try to get into acting, and I showed up in my agent's office, and she said, "Sit down in that chair," which was across from hers. And right in front of me, there was like, I don't know, 10 toys. And of course, what would most kids do? Well, start playing
Oh,
with toys.
yeah.
Crossed my hands, and I put them in my lap, and I looked at her, and I spoke to her, and answered her questions and all that. And she looked at me just amazed and went, "I'll take you on because you're a young gentleman. You did not touch the toys. You didn't go crazy. You're not running around the office here." So, yeah, that's I think one of the reasons why I got taken on with Mary Grady.
Mm.
Um, and but I was. I mean, my dad was in the army. You went by dad's rules.
Mm.
You didn't cut up when you weren't supposed to, and so again on set, Richard Long was like my dad, and Juliet was like my mom. And then, of course, she had her son, my little brother. So it was a good time. I mean, and then I got along really well with the special effects guy because I actually initiated on scene when we were doing stuff. Like I'd have a switch in my hand when we were driving the car because the car we had, it would like blow up exhaust. Well, I was actually the one in the car that on cue would push the button to make it blow up. So
Wow.
I got to work with the special effects guys, and I was that kind of scientific, nerdy kind of guy anyway. Although I was very athletic, I was like that. So because of that, I got along with him. I got along with the main lighting gaffer and the grip and these guys, but they were like 6'8", 6'11". They were huge men.
Jeez.
uh, I remember them one day on set, and they got really mad at each other for some reason, and they both stuck their hand out to shake, and that's how they were fighting. They were squeezing each other's hands, and it's like, that's interesting. So I like that idea of fighting that way, not much better. But they grab me and throw me up on their shoulder and walk around. So um, it wasn't like work. And again, I learned my lines so fast that I had a lot of spare time. I did my school so quickly that, it didn't take a lot of time. So I had a lot of spare time on my hands to play on the set and, kind of get involved with those people.
Mhm.
So,
Oh, that's cool. Did
yeah.
so once the show was over, had you formed bonds that you then maintained with any of the cast or the crew?
Um, None of the crew, because it's like they go on to work and work on something else. So, you know, well, it didn't. I don't think Nanny went on long enough to really form those bonds. Of course, with Trent, my younger brother, Butch, um, our parents actually set up a situation because either you have a guardian or a parent bring you to the studios when you're young, and so like one day my mom would bring us two boys, and he'd stay over at my house and that night, and then the next day his mom would pick us up and she'd take us in. So it was like it made it so that they both the moms didn't have to do it full time all the time, fight the
Yeah.
traffic, everything else. So I formed a very tight bond with him, and but unfortunately we kind of lost track, and then he ended up calling me. I think, well, it was a couple weeks before he passed away, and we were going to get together afterwards, but it just didn't work out. So unfortunately, he committed suicide, and it didn't work out. So
Mhm.
and Kim, I didn't. Nothing. I mean, she went on and she was still filming Witch Mountain and all the wonderful things that she went on to do. Um, I didn't get to date her older sister, which I wanted to, but that didn't happen. And of course, you know who her older sister is, right? Kim's older sister.
Yeah, who is your older sister?
Her name is Kathy, and she married a gentleman by the last name of Hilton,
Oh, okay.
and then had
Okay. I
daughters.
did know that. Yeah.
Yeah, they had two daughters.
Okay.
So people often tease me, Dave, if you'd just stuck with her, you'd had a couple of beautiful daughters like that. It's like, that's all right. I got my beautiful daughters.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I saw that Jodie Foster did an episode.
yes. Well, there was a lot of people that came in, and I mean, sure, like the
Yeah.
Walt to come in and do an episode here and then. I mean, very famous people.
Yeah, Howard Cosell I saw did an episode or something.
Yeah, I remember because I loved ventriloquism, and Winchell Mahoney came on.
Oh.
I think it was The Haunting. Gosh, I'm remembering these things. Um, and I remember going up to this haunted house. It was a set, and we were walking up this road, and all of a sudden, this voice started coming out of the haunted house, and it was 30 feet away. And it's like, wee it's like, how is that voice coming out of there? This is really scary. And it was Winchell Mahoney throwing his voice,
Wow.
and he could do that. I said, teach me how to do that. I mean, I was I'm sure I was his little puppy dog following him everywhere. I never learned it, but still, um, things like that. I mean, I can't remember. I'm so bad at names, but there are quite a number of people that came on to our sets. And again, everybody was super nice. I don't know if it was just because we were kids or what, but
Yeah.
enjoyed, you know, stuff like
Yeah.
that.
That's it's always so cool. Yeah, when you do a show, and because it's your show, you have a comfort level on your set.
Yeah.
So no matter who comes in, like you can be
Well,
stars I could be starstruck, but it's kind
yeah.
of like I feel like it's okay to interact with them because
The thing is,
it's
though,
our
is that
set.
I was so young, and I know the other kids were too, is that when they come in, you don't really realize who they are.
Yeah, that
And
happened too.
not a number of years later, and I'd see an episode and I'd go, "Oh my gosh, they were on our show." It was like Ellen. I mean, here's Mama, Grandma Walton on the show. I didn't have a clue who she was or anything about her, and so it is
Yeah.
very strange, and especially being so young, I just didn't realize. I did realize. I know we did an outdoor shot at the studio 20th, and I remember seeing George Burns, and
Mm.
I knew who he was, and it just tickled me. And there he was with his cigar, and I just got super tickled. And I don't know, I was 11 years old. Hi, Mr. Burns, how are you? I did recognize him. But of course, another thing too is, um, like it seemed like the whole studio shut down at lunchtime and went to the commissary
Mm.
at the 20th. So you'd go in there and you'd be in there with multiple people that were superstars, just at different stages, working at different show at a different time, and but you're in an environment where you look over and you don't want to interrupt their food, you don't want to interrupt anything. You'd like to go, I'd like to get your autograph or something. But again, that wasn't something I was really into anyway. But it's just like I'd like to go say hi, but it's like no, I can't interrupt them during lunchtime, and that may be the first and the last time I would see them. But that was kind of neat too, because again, later on in years, you realize who those people actually were sitting there, eating lunch just like just like normal people, because they are normal people. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Were there particular people that you bonded with on our show over the seasons?
Well, David Harper, of course, that's my little brother, and he's been my little brother. Um, he and I talk all the time. We talk about everything under the sun. Um,
How did that come about? Because he was a bit younger when.
Well, he had I walked on the show, he recognized me from Nanny and Professor. So right off the get-go, he was like my little mini me. I guess he
I mean,
like
I watched the show, Nanny
yeah,
and the Professor. I loved the show. I thought it was a lot of
yeah.
fun. Yeah.
But he, I guess, really enjoyed my character, whatever the case is, and was really excited to have me on the Waltons. And I can remember him running around with me a lot there. And we lost track of each other for a while. And gosh, I can't even remember now when it kind of picked back up. But again, he and I talk all the time. And I, he's a brother. I mean, kind
Mhm.
of thing. So it's kind of neat.
That's cool. I mean, I'm so glad that, that we've had the chance over the years to, somebody's put together something and, and that there's been a chance for us to kind of, you know, reconnect and whatnot. And I always appreciate when that happens because it is so easy to just your life moves on and you're on to the
Yeah.
next thing and you lose track.
You
That
you
I
do
think
lose
people
track.
think that we've worked together and I have contact numbers on everybody. They're like, "Why don't you call so and so and have them on?" I'm like, "I don't have any way of getting a hold of that person."
Yeah, yeah. I I think from what I understand, at least you Walton group have kind of stayed together more, I think, than
Yes.
most.
Yes.
Um, and I think that's probably because of the growing up. the ages and stuff, over 9, 10 years, 11 years,
Yeah.
whatever, of being together. And it is you become like brothers and sisters. You
Yeah.
fight, argue, you play, everything. So I know that there's been family events that you know people have gotten together even on that, of course, after, of course, the Waltons. But one thing I enjoy is that, of course, seeing you, and I hadn't seen you for a while. It's like, Judy, it's like,
Yeah.
I know you.
GW.
So it's like, I guess even like a relative. You don't see him a
Yeah.
number of years, but you see him again and you pick up right where you came. It's like you never lost it. You never, and that's kind of the way I feel with, a lot of the Waltons cast is, that's the way it is. And yeah, I mean, Mary, it's like, she's so inviting when I see her all the time. It's like, hey, so it's like, yeah, like a sister, like you see a sister again, so it's fun like that.
Yeah. You have been very generous with your time here, and I appreciate that. It's just been fun to fun to riff off on all these different things, you know.
Yeah, no, it's been enjoyable. Again, you and I mean, we've seen each other some reunions, but haven't really gotten time to talk. So
Yeah.
that is enjoyable for me. Hopefully it's been for you.
Yes, it has. Yeah, I mean, because when we do the events, it's always, there's so many people that and so
So,
many obligations we have that we don't really get to hang out.
and I've enjoyed today. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you, and I appreciate that wow, that you did homework. That was,
Oh, it had been so long, and I found myself, kind of not remembering, and like the bicycle is like, I don't remember being on the bicycle. I'm going to have to really look at that, and I watched the whole thing through.
yeah,
Go,
and the
I didn't see me.
no, I
So
didn't
where did
either.
I get that one? Again, just watching again the development of the characters and so on from the first years to the last years. It was kind of fun too. In fact, it's so funny. I would happen to think about it right now that good night, Mary Ellen, good night, Mama, good night, son. My family has done that from like day one.
Wow.
I mean, still right now, I've got two of my boys living with me, and it's like, good night, Blake, good night, Chase, and good night, Mom, good night, Dad. So little things like that that have a place in your heart. And of course, that's in my heart and your heart. But look at all the fans and all the people that watch it, it's in their hearts. So that's the difference. It really made you come to life. Yeah.
Thank you for joining me for the conclusion of my conversation with David Doremus. It has been such a treat to catch up with him, and I hope you've had some of your questions answered and that you have enjoyed your time here with both of us. I'll see you next time for more behind the scenes of the Waltons. Thanks for watching.